Okay, so today it is really cold outside. As you can see here, it's in the single digits. The wild birds are outside holding their own. The good news is, notice that there is no wind, and that's very important. So what I'm doing today is I'm going to continue with another frequently asked questions video, and this time we're talking about chickens. The last time we did a frequently asked questions related to honeybees. If you haven't seen it and you're interested in bees, please check that out. I want to start right off by thanking the people on Facebook primarily who logged right in and wrote their top concerns for beginning chicken owners, and that's what we're going to address today. If this works out, much like the honeybee frequently asked questions one worked out and people seem to like it, I may continue the series, so we'll just continue to ask questions. It's nothing but me standing here talking about what I know. I've been raising poultry since the turn of the century. Sounds cool when you say it that way. And I'm a certified poultry technician, and that's it. I love chickens. We have chickens in the backyard. We have 3 different chicken coops, and we've had chickens continuously, and I highly recommend them. And I know that there's a lot of information out there already about chickens, and probably why I don't focus that much on them. There are a pile of videos that I've made about chickens, and if you look at the very end of this video, there will be some end links showing a playlist that I've put together for everything you may want to know about poultry and raising chickens. So before we get on with the questions, I want to point out some other resources for you. There's a video, 3-hour video guide regarding chickens, essentials for the flock owner. This has 3 hours of information. This thing is available on Amazon, so I will leave a link there for everything I'm going to name. There are lots of books out there. This is one of the books. You can see I've got a lot of markers in it and stuff. One of the books that I read many years ago, but I really enjoy it because it's kind of the history. It's just called The Chicken Book, Paige Smith and Charles Daniel. This has a lot of history of the chicken. The chicken has been in human culture throughout the world for thousands of years, and this even talks about chickens in Egypt back when they were building the pyramids, and even the Great Wall of China being constructed by workers who were being fed chicken. Kind of interesting there. Also, these questions and answers should be fairly simple. A lot of people want to write and say, my chicken's sick and sitting in a corner and all fluffed up and her head's down, and what's wrong with my chicken? That's hard. Unless I physically come and look at a chicken, I'm not going to be able to do any kind of assessment of what its health issues might be. You always want to look at chicken droppings and stuff for overall health, but let's get to the point here. The Chicken Health Handbook. I'm going to put a link to this also available on Amazon. This is by Gail Damereau. I hope I said that right because I don't know how to say her name. But Gail Damereau has written lots of poultry books, lots of great ones. In fact, I used to read a paperback, Chickens in Your Backyard, back in the 90s, well before I got my own chickens. My first exposure to chickens was in my Aunt Janet's farm in Norwich, Vermont, probably when I was 6 years old, and they had a chicken coop attached to the end of their dairy barn, and I just thought chickens were amazing. And during the day, they free range there, of course, when it wasn't snowy and freezing, as it is here today. So now we're going to jump right in. If this works out, and you like this format, you want to hear more about chickens from me, simply write your questions down in the response list below this video, or you can join us on Facebook. It's Fred's Fine Fowl. You can also go to my website, www.fredsfinefowl.com, and there's lots of random information there about chickens and honeybees, of course. So the very first thing that came from the Facebook response group here, number 1 is mite treatment. Chickens have mites, they may have fleas, they may have other parasites. These are external. And what would you treat them with? Well, my remedy has been the same for many years. If I have a hen that's going to be brooding eggs in her nest box, I'm going to dust up that nest box first with diatomaceous earth. And that's also what I recommend that you put on the chickens. You can take food grade diatomaceous earth. I'll put that link also in the video description so you can find it and read about it. It's a very fine powder. You grab each chicken one by one. When I do this, I go into the chicken coop, close all the doors so nobody can get out, and I pick them up one by one and I work in diatomaceous earth under their arms, everywhere, all over the chicken, just working in everywhere. and that serves to kill off any external parasites. Also, again, when birds are sitting in their nest box and they're sitting on eggs, and if they're brooding especially because they're going to be there for many hours, I put in the base of that nest box, before I put the pine shavings in, I put diatomaceous earth and work that all up, and that way any parasites that may move in to go after that chicken are taken care of. So again, if you want to ask about internal parasites, or you've got parasites showing up in your chicken droppings and things like that, I'm going to take you right back to the Chicken Health Handbook and let you make your own decision based on the recommendations there. There are charts in here with fantastic diagnostics, so you can put in the symptoms, the age of your bird, because a lot of issues with chickens are age related. So diatomaceous earth, that's the only thing. I don't treat them with anything else. So my birds are free ranging. They're on a deep litter system in the coop. They're given supreme food and of course what they can forage. And I really have been very fortunate that we don't have a lot of really sick poultry. But specifically when it comes to mites, feather mites, like you see feathers being chewed off of your chickens and things like that, you can examine them. When I have been inspecting chickens before and drawing blood from them, I've actually picked up chickens from other poultry owners and had the mites and chicken lice go right across my fingers, and I just hand them their bird back because they need to treat that and take care of that. Don't go around other chicken owners with your chickens unless you know for sure that they're all safe and tested. So that's the first one, diatomaceous earth. Protection from predators. If you keep chickens free range, or even if you have a chicken pen, there are a lot of measures to protect from predators, and this is based upon what kind of predators are even in the area where you live. So we're thinking about daytime predators, because hopefully your chicken coop locks up securely at night. You have a chicken door that you latch. You have a man door, a people door that you latch. If you have a chicken run, most chicken runs lock up, but those are considered exposed areas for predation because things like to dig under, even small weasels can get in and kill chickens. So what do I do? The first line of defense is just having a really solid chicken coop. I also put all of my chicken coops well up off the ground. If you look at any of my other videos, if you follow the link at the end of this video, and you look at my video regarding chicken housing, hen houses, chicken coops, every single one of my coops is well up off the ground. And that's because if you have a chicken coop and you put it straight on the ground, within a matter of weeks you're going to have rodents living underneath your chicken coop. So that's where it begins. And then the predators that your chickens are at risk of being attacked by has a lot to do with the age of your birds and how savvy they are on open range. Chicken breeds come into play too, because a lot of chicken breeds are very fast and alert and aware. Very difficult for a predator to catch them. Hawks are spotted by chickens, but if your chicken is a slow runner, if you've got a Polish chicken with a lot of feathering on its head, it's not even going to see that coming. They are sitting ducks when it comes to open range. So the predator protection also depends on where those chickens are being kept. So mine are free rangers. They're exposed to everything, but I notice when I look out in the chicken yard and there's not a bird to be seen anywhere, that there's a predator around. Usually it's a hawk. We've seen hawks make dry run after dry run after dry run because the birds are so aware that they run under those raised coops for immediate protection. They can also get inside the coop for protection. They get under trees and shrubs, and so they know quickly, where to go and hide. The other big threat is a fox. They come during the daytime, especially in the spring. So again, don't put your chicken coops along a tree line. Give your chickens an open space where a predator might seek cover so that they have a time to see the predator coming and then they have a chance to evade. Some chickens can basically fly. They can fly up into trees. Some of them just dart right inside the chicken coop. Extremely rare for a fox to go right inside a chicken coop, but they are bold, especially the mothers, and they can clean out many chickens in a single day. So having areas for your birds to hide in, but the most important thing is when nighttime comes, make sure that your birds are locked up securely and that nothing can get in. Raccoons will fiddle with latches. Possums will go right inside your chicken coop. So raccoons and possums, those are a big deal at night. Fisher cats, Those will come at night. Very powerful weasel that would do a number. It could actually wipe out an entire chicken coop if you forget and leave everything open. So, and also we use night guard flashing lights, and we also have pest away, and we have predator guard, which can squeak and make a loud noise and flash lights. That's kind of a terrible prevention during the daytime because your chickens are going to set those things off. I use actually predator repellents to keep my chickens from digging holes underneath trees and so on. So protection from predators really comes down to being aware of what predators are in your area, and then setting up a canopy over the run if you need that. If you've got a lot of hawks and stuff at night, there would be owls, but then again, if they're not out in the run, the owls can't get them. So mostly it's being aware of what the predators are and then tailoring your protection to whatever those predators are. So I use trail cameras and night cameras, motion activated cameras, to see what's prowling around my area, primarily at night. So we're very fortunate we don't lose a lot of chickens to predators. Question number 3, roosters, do I need one? Okay. Most people want to know if they need a rooster to produce eggs. If they have hens and roosters, their chickens will produce eggs, and if the roosters are around, there's a good chance those are fertile eggs. So, do you need a rooster for a hen to produce eggs? No. Because when chickens, let's take a Rhode Island Red for example, at 5 months of age, a Rhode Island Red will be in lay. So, once they do that, that's just a matter of the maturing process and the reproductive system of the chicken. So that hen will start to produce an egg, and that's it. No rooster needed. And then those eggs are good for consumption. Now that egg that she produces, if she sits on it or if it goes into an incubator, can that be incubated and hatched? No, you need a rooster. So you only need the rooster if you're going to reproduce and expand your flock and if you're going to hatch chicks. So now, do you need a rooster though? Here's the thing, if you've got open range and you've got a free range flock of chickens, you're going to want some pretty prominent roosters out there. Because the rooster buys the hens time. When a predator shows up, the rooster will engage the predator in case it's a chicken and runs away. The rooster will engage the predator and fight with it until the hens run off. I've seen roosters best red-tailed hawks before. And we had 3, in the beginning we had 3 Rhode Island Red roosters, nice large birds with great big spikes on their legs. Spurs, if you want to call them that. And they would actually spur animals, and they were very bold. Now, with usually a red-tailed hawk, rooster has a standoff with a red-tailed hawk, the rooster's going to die. But he's going to fight long enough that the other birds fly away, and it's not an easy gain for that hawk. A large standard rooster is a heavy bird. So most hawks will have to kill the bird and eat it in place, and they kind of drag it across the field a little bit maybe to get clear, but they can't grab it and fly away with it. Sometimes smaller bantam chickens can just be snatched and flown away by the predator. So do you need a rooster? Yes, for beauty, yes, for social structure, and yes, for protection of the flock on open range. If you've got chickens in a pen, you absolutely don't need one. Most chicken-friendly cities that allow you to keep birds in city limits won't even allow you to have a rooster because people don't want to hear it crow. People that write those ordinances haven't met some of my hens because they lay an egg and squawk about it for 10 minutes, and they can be heard everywhere. So really, hens are no more quiet than roosters are in a lot of cases. But I think you need them just for the beauty of having a rooster and the social structure that they provide. How long will a chicken live? That's a good question. It's a very common question. You know what's interesting? The world record for chicken life is about 16 years. And that's a very long-lived chicken. That was an Old English game bird, and I think it was purchased at a fair a long time ago, and that record was just set in like 2007, 8, or 9, because in 2006, I believe that same chicken was the longest living chicken at 14 years. So 2008 or 9 is probably when it died, and it was 16 years old. That's the record. Your chickens are going to live, on average, 3 to 7 years. That's what my chickens live here. If you're a Purdue chicken, you live about 5 weeks, and that's it. But a well cared for chicken, oh yeah, Kentucky Fried Chickens, they live 5 weeks. And then they're slaughtered for chicken baskets. Okay, how many eggs do chickens lay? That's my 5th question already. I'm moving right along. So, How many eggs do chickens lay? Chickens lay eggs based on their breed. Some breeds of chickens are known as excellent egg layers. White Leghorns, for example, will lay 250 eggs a year, maybe more. And that also depends on the climate that you're in. But on average, so they've won records for egg laying. There are records for, even in fairs, there are records for hens that lay the most eggs during the period of a fair. So how many eggs do they lay? A chicken in lay, that means she's not molting, she's not too old, is going to produce an egg every 25 hours. Now, when that egg is produced and she's about to lay, if that 25th hour happens in darkness, she won't lay the egg. She'll wait until daylight comes, and then she'll lay her egg in her nest box. So that's when they're not laying, when it's dark. So on average, it depends on the bird. Leghorns are great layers. Rhode Island Reds are dual-purpose fowl, so they lay eggs pretty regularly, over 200 a year. So it's almost impossible to estimate with any great accuracy exactly how many eggs a specific hen is going to produce, because even within the same breed, you'll have some hens that lay every single day. I do know that it drops off dramatically after about 18 months of age, and then they'll probably go into a molt and they'll be off lay for several weeks, and then as their feathers return and the reproductive system kicks back in, they'll start producing eggs again every 25 hours when it lands on a daylight hour. So that's it. Where do I get feed and how much do they eat? You can get chicken feed from any feed store, and that's kind of silly, I guess. There are food co-ops. Anytime there's agricultural activity around, you'll be able to find out where to get chicken feed. Tractor Supply is a good national chain that sells feed. Most of your pet shops, if you are in an area, an urban area, and no one is selling chicken feed, or it's a couple hours drive away, I would talk to a pet shop owner and just ask if they can get chicken feed delivered along with their other feed, just special request it. But any place where there's farm and agriculture going on, people have horses, any place where there's feed and grain already being produced for livestock, you can generally get your chicken feed there. When you're buying chicken feed, you want to make sure to get full rations, and you want the chicken feed to be appropriate for the age of your bird. Chickens that are starting out, baby chicks, they're going to need a high protein ration, and that will be very different from their growing and finishing phase where they need high protein still, but it's a different ration. And then when they lay their first egg, now you need a layer ration, which also has to be a complete ration with all the nutrients that they're going to need for that. But Google your area, chicken feed, find pet shops, find equestrian supplies, any place like that, and they're going to sell you feed. Now, how much do they eat? Chickens, now that depends. My chickens eat 1/3 of the purchased rations that other people's chickens do if my chickens are on open range, because they're going to get most of their food out and about. They're eating greens, they're omnivorous, they're eating bugs. All day long, chickens are eating, unless they're dust bathing or they're laying down, sitting in the sun, or they're just taking a nap. The rest of the time, they're eating full time. So if you had them cooped up and had to feed them, it would be 1/4 pound to 1/2 pound of feed per bird. So if you're having to estimate for your flock and you're trying to plan, what it's going to cost you to keep them in the wintertime, you're going to feed them full rations. So they're going to eat 1/4 to 1/2 pound per bird. And larger chickens, younger chickens, it all depends on the bird itself, how much it's going to eat. Bantams don't eat as much as large standard birds. If you have a full-size cochin, that thing is going to eat you out of house and home, and it's not going to lay any eggs. Maybe 1 egg every 3 or 4 days or something, but they look good, so they make up for it. And they have great personalities. So chicken feed is not cheap. 15-pound bag of chicken feed might cost you $15 to $20. A 50-pound bag, $15 to $20, depending on its composition and who makes it. So do chickens need a coop? Yes, they do. Chickens need a coop for many reasons, but primarily so that they have a safe place to lay their eggs, they have a safe place to roost at night, and they have a place where feed and water is available all the time. If their food and water is outside of the coop, other animals have the opportunity then to visit their feeders. You want to avoid that. We definitely don't want wild birds, for example, feeding from a chicken feeder. We even want to keep other animals out of their water if we can help it. So inside the coop is a controlled environment for your birds. Hopefully you're going to make your coop big enough that you can get in there too. You need to inspect that space, but it needs to be able to lock your chickens up securely, shield them from weather extremes. Hopefully it doesn't have a metal roof. If you're in a hot climate and you have a metal roof that's just going to radiate heat like crazy and it's going to overheat your coop. If you're in a really cold climate and you have a metal roof, then it's likewise going to transmit cold. Plus it's noisy in there. I recommend wooden roofs and even shingled roofs just like a normal house. But it needs to protect them, insulate them primarily from wind and extreme weather. So, and a safe place at night, lockable. So, they need a coop. I've done a whole video series on chicken coops and things to consider when you're building one. If you're buying a chicken coop somewhere, usually they're undersized, and that's because the companies that sell them have to consider storage space and shipping and assembly and all of that. So when you buy chicken coops from stores, even Tractor Supply, places like that, they are way undersized. So coops that you build yourself, or maybe buy a garden shed. So if you can get a good sized garden shed and then just convert it, put the equipment in there necessary to support your chickens, much better than buying these tiny kind of doghouse sized chicken coops. Those are really terrible micro environments. Just my opinion, but there are reasons why they're small, and even though they're made of great materials and everything else, and they have the nest box access on the outside and everything, there really is inadequate interior space for large standard chickens, and they just are cramped and generally don't do well. So they do need a coop. How do I make chickens put eggs where I want them? Or do I have to egg hunt to find them? Okay. A lot of that has to do with how you start your chickens. So infrastructure first. Don't buy chicks. Don't get an incubator and start hatching eggs until you have accommodation set up for the adult birds. Often people will speculate, so they'll get the chicks through mail order or something like that, and then once they have them, they know they're going to have them in a brooder for a period of time. Usually 6 weeks, you're going to control your chicks and their climate and heat and feed and all that stuff. So people think, well, in 6 weeks I have time to build my coop. You want to have everything set up ahead of time, in my opinion. You want to have their final adult structure ready to go. So once you do that, you're going to include nest boxes. Now here's my thing about nest boxes. It will be inside the coop in a sheltered, protected space. How many nest boxes do you need? People like to put a nest box for every chicken, thinking that each hen is going to have her own nest box, and that's going to be hers, and she's going to lay her eggs right there. The nest box needs to be in the darkest part of the coop. So if there's a wall in your chicken coop and there's a window on that wall, that's the wall that the nest box goes into. Because the nest box being here, the light comes in and hits the opposite wall, and then this wall is actually the darkest space. If your nest boxes are brightly lit and the chickens can walk by and see your eggs at eye level, they have a tendency to start pecking at those eggs out of boredom, and they might end up eating the eggs. The other thing is, when your chickens are young, don't have nest boxes in there that are open and accessible to them. So when you've transferred your chicks into your hen house and they're growing out in there and they're not egg laying yet, they're just a few months old, people get so excited about it and they want to put that nest box in there, they want everything to be cool and finished, and they want a place for them to lay their eggs when it happens. Then they leave those nest boxes open, and you know what the birds often do? They just roost right inside those nest boxes, and they get in the habit of using that nest box as a perch more than a place to put eggs. So I recommend you close up your nest boxes, otherwise the chickens are even they're gonna put manure in those nest boxes, and you're gonna be cleaning them out a lot. So we want them to lay their eggs in there. So the thing is, the chickens are gonna lay their eggs instinctively where they already tend to roost overnight. So if you've got them in a shed or something, some kind of well-made chicken coop, the chickens are going to start their day in there, they're gonna have spent their nights in there, and they're gonna go in there on their own in the evening. So eventually you're just going to see a hen drop an egg on the floor. And that's when you know, oh, they're in lay now, so let's make nest boxes available. You need one nest box for every 4 hens because they're going to share space. A hen will see an egg in a nest box, and you can even put decoy eggs in there made out of wood or ceramic or something else that looks like an egg. and she will see that egg in there, and then she'll go in and lay her egg next to it. That's why we end up with all these little egg clutches when you go to collect eggs at the end of the day. You're going to see that the hens, there might be, if you had 15 nest boxes because you've got 15 chickens, you're going to see 3 or 4 nest boxes actually being used, and they'll have clutches of eggs in each one because they think there's safety in numbers, and where they see an egg that is not being eaten by something else, they'll park their egg next to it. And then brood hens may even sit those eggs and try to hatch them. So, how do I make chickens put eggs where I want them? They just naturally are going to put their eggs in a dark, sheltered, protected, comfortable space. So you control that by providing that kind of environment inside your chicken coop. Okay, can chickens sleep in trees at night? Can they or should they? If a chicken is sleeping, this probably comes from people that are living down in the south because your birds, it's nice and warm outside, and they might get in the habit of roosting up in trees. And if they do that, you're going to be in trouble because they are open to night predation. So in my opinion, they should not be roosting in trees. And all these habits are developed while your chicks are growing up. This is also another reason why you want to keep food and water inside your chicken coop. Because at the end of the day, chickens have a tendency to go and get that last little fill up at the feeder, drink some water, then they go to roost. If the food and water is inside the chicken coop, they're going to naturally migrate into the chicken coop, feed and water, and then they see the rafters and they see the roosts and they jump up on them and they settle for the night. It is less likely that they go outside and jump up into a tree. The only reason your birds are in a tree is because that environment is more appealing to them than whatever you've provided in the chicken coop. So I suggest you might want to revisit what their chicken coop is like and how appealing it is to the chickens. They're creatures of habit, gallinaceous birds. They're going to be in the coop if that's where they grew up, and they're going to naturally seek shelter, sanctuary, and a place to sleep at night where they've grown and come accustomed to. So you don't want them in trees at night. They're just open to predation, and they're just all going to disappear, very likely. Number 10, keep hens laying in winter. There's a Facebook question right there. This is something that commercial egg production companies have figured out. The pituitary gland of the chicken and how that impacts their function of producing an egg. So it's relevant to daylight. Chickens, as I mentioned before, don't generally lay eggs in darkness. So if they're laying an egg every 25 hours and you want to exploit that fact of chicken biology, then keeping lights on 24/7 causes those hens to produce right on schedule, right through the day and night. That's why commercial poultry operations that are in egg production burn out their chickens in less than 18 months, and then they're rotating them out and bringing new ones in, and the rotated out birds end up being used for something else. But in a backyard situation or with a hobby chicken keeper, you can put a light inside your chicken coop. And put it on a timer. You want that light. You need about an average of 14 hours of light per day. Keeps 14 hours and more keeps chickens in maximum production. There is a natural rhythm with chickens that as they go into winter, they would instinctively shut down egg production, and then what happens is the reproductive system regenerates itself through winter, and then they start producing eggs again in spring when the days start to lengthen again. So some people really want eggs from those chickens throughout the year. So set a timer. If sunrise is in the wintertime at 7:30 or something like that, then you can have a light come on in your chicken coop at say 4:30 in the morning. And then that wakes up the chickens. Some of them will jump off of their perches and roost, and then they will go and get some food, get some water. And it is the habit of a lot of hens to go ahead and jump right up into those nest boxes and produce their egg. So you don't want to have the light extend their night, because then what happens is the birds are inside the coop, there's a light on, so they're all running around, and then that timer goes off and that light clicks off, and there they are on the floor of the hen house, and they can't see to jump up to their roost or perch. So you really want that light to come on early in the morning rather than extend into the night at the end of the day. But providing 14 hours minimum of light will enhance their instinct to produce an egg. So you can extend the fact that they're going to lay in winter. What do you do with chicken manure? That also was just posted yesterday. Chicken manure, I have a whole, again, another video about this, gardening with chickens. You can look that up. And I show you exactly what I do. Our hen houses have the deep litter system. Now, deep litter is with pine shavings in my case. Pine shavings are super absorbent. They also are a great nitrogen binder in the soil later when you take them out of your coop. We do not have droppings pits. A lot of people set up their chicken coop so that underneath their roost they have a caged off area where the droppings fall through and you have concentrated chicken manure. That is nitrogen superheated, and it will, unless it's completely dried out and aged properly, that's going to burn your plants up. So you really can't use that. The deep litter system means that once you've cleaned out your chicken coop and you've laid down a good base of pine shavings, and the chickens just roam around and eliminate wherever they want to. The other thing is there's no reason to concentrate all of your roosts in one area. My chickens like to be in the rafters, so they're spread out from one end of the coop to the other. And that means that their droppings while they're sleeping are spread out all over the coop. And they naturally dig through the pine shavings through the day, so they're mixing it up. And then you go in, and if you see concentrated areas of chicken manure, amend that with more pine shavings and mix it in, and that dries out the manure, and then you have a nice mulch later for when you start your garden. Then in the spring, when we're cleaning out the chicken coops again, we clean out the coops entirely and put all that mulch on top of the garden after the seeds have been planted. We don't mix it in. So once your garden's prepped, seeds are planted, and the seedlings are coming up so you can see where they are, we put all that dry mulch right on top of the garden, and that prevents weed growth and provides nitrogen for the birds. Then, at the end of the gardening season, when you've taken everything you need off of it and we're now in the fall, that's when you turn all of that in, because it's also aged through the summer, it's been on the top, you've benefited from the nitrogen that comes off of that manure, and your plants are insanely awesome. Then you turn it all in and let that winter over, and then in the spring you've got a fresh garden plot to start again, and the cycle starts over again. Now, the cleanouts that you do during the summer of your chicken coops, you will compost that. So you just keep saving it. It's gold for growing plants. So that's what we do with chicken manure. We recycle it and use it for gardening. And deep litter systems, 6 inches deep or more. That's deep litter. So the birds can dig through it and everything else. And guess what else happens while the manure is decomposing inside? It generates its own antibacterial properties. So if you get down on your knees inside that chicken coop and you're playing with your chickens, you're talking to them and you're seeing how their day is going, and if you smell ammonia, okay, that's moisture and that's decomposition of the manure, that ammonia is self-sanitizing inside that coop in that deep litter system. And of course, if you can smell it, it burns your nostrils a little bit. Amend that with a little more pine shavings. But the other thing is, not only does that provide, a deep litter system provides a soft landing if you've got really big birds. They're going to jump down from those rafters and they're going to land hard on the floor. If there's a nice pad of shavings down there, they don't hurt their feet. If they're jumping off and you're thump, 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 and all these big birds are hitting that floor with their feet, you risk bruising their feet and causing bumblefoot. So there are many reasons for having a deep litter system inside your coop. And the ability to use the manure in the way I described is just one of them. The advantages are huge. And in the wintertime, like today, single digits, you go inside a chicken coop and it's much warmer than the outside. And that's not because we put heat in there. It's because they're sheltered from wind, and the birds are respirating in there and generating their own heat. And the deep litter system, through decomposition, is also generating some heat. Go and look at a compost pile in the middle of winter and stick a pitchfork in it and scoop it open, steam just rises off of it. That's because that bioactivity in that compost pile is generating heat, and that can happen inside coops too. So in a chicken coop, you want ventilation without having it be breezy, because they want some air movement, but they can't be exposed to drafts. I hope that makes sense. Number 12, molting. What is molting? Okay. Chickens go through a lot of different styles of molt. Some of our hens out there, you can't even tell when they're molting because they do it in little bits and pieces at a time. Molting is just a natural cycle. Feathers wear out. Chickens need to replace their feathers, so the molt is when they're shedding their feathers. So if your chicken walks out one day and it just looks nappy and it has little patches and spots of feathers missing everywhere, that chicken is doing a dramatic molt. So when they do that, you also may wonder, how come my chickens aren't producing any eggs right now? Well, how old are your chickens? Oh, they're about 19 months old. Oh, what do their feathers look like? Their feathers look kind of rough. They're molting. When they start molting, they're losing a lot of protein, and they're going to need protein. It's a good time to boost protein for your chickens, by the way, when they're molting. And they'll shed all their feathers, and then they have to regenerate those feathers so they stop egg laying. So once that happens, you can augment protein for your chickens by increasing the protein of the feed at that time. The problem is when you have a whole flock. So when you have a whole flock and they're not all molting at the same time, they're all different ages and so on, so they're going through different things at different times, you need to be able to provide food resources free choice. So you'll have your complete rations, but you'll also have bits of crushed oyster shell in the corner, and that's for those that feel like they need more calcium. You might have granite grit over in the corner somewhere else, and that's for those that can't get outside in winter to restore, get through their crop and into the gizzard, some granite grits so they can grind up their food. So there are a lot of things that you can offer inside your coop that help your chickens that need different resources at different times obtain them. But boosting protein for molting chickens is one thing that you can do to help them regenerate those feathers soon, and hopefully they don't do that in the middle of winter. Those are all the questions I have. So thank you to those of you who submitted your frequently asked questions, and I hope that this is beneficial. If this works out and you want to hear more, and you have more questions now that you've listened to these answers and you think, well, I want to know some more about this or that, please write that down in the comments. Also on Facebook through Fred's Fine Fowl, go ahead and put questions there and give me feedback on the video here. If you like these frequently asked questions videos, let me know and we'll just keep doing them. If not, we'll just fade out and go back to doing what I do. Thanks again. I appreciate that you watched today.